ॐ नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. So we were discussing the steps after asana and pranayama. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama. So the fifth step was pratyahara. Now we were trying to find out what is this pratyahara and why is it important before we even start concentration, which is dharana, and then we have the dhyana, which is meditation. There are certain steps which are known as pratyahara. Pratyahara, dharana, and dhyana. Now, what is pratyahara? As we discussed last time, that we have to first know that how perception takes place in the human body. How does perception takes place? How does perceptions take place in the human body? There are five gyanendriyas, five karmendriyas, which give the input. They go to the sense organs, sense centers. They are the subtle sense organs in the brain. Though the external organs are by themselves not capable of giving you perception, it is only when they go to the brain center, which happens in a fraction of a second, you get all those perceptions, and the perceptions you get are recognized in the brain, and some meaning is there is some meaning which is understood by the brain depending on the perception, depending on the sense organ. And the quality of the sense organ, no doubt, is important, but it is also important that the interpretation of the perceptions or interpretation of the input given by the sense organs are properly processed in the brain, which does not happen in some cases, people who are autistic or many other problems. All their organs are fine, but when it goes to the brain, somehow there is some damage in the brain which does not allow them to process. So the sense organs may be fine, the eyes which act as a camera may be fine, but the software which is responsible for running that camera may not be perfect. And that is why they say that all the organs and the subtle organs in the brain should be perfect to get a perfect perception. Now, when these come together and attach themselves to some external object, we are seeing objects all the time. Prakriti is showing us uh, sight, sound, taste, smell, and many things which uh, we see through the eyes, we hear through the ears, and we smell through the nose, and all those things. These perceptions are there. But how it goes, how they attach themselves to some external object, and then we perceive it. So it is a difficult thing. Last time we discussed this, that it's a difficult thing to concentrate the mind and attach it to one organ only. That is the difficulty we find when we do dharana and dhyana. People say that I'm disturbed by the sound around me, because all the five organs, directly or indirectly, you may close your eyes, but that doesn't mean you can stop your hearing. You, unless you put some plug in your ear, you will be hearing sound. You will be feeling certain things. The skin is also giving you some input. The nose is giving you smell. So you can't shut out all the organs. But Swamiji says it is a difficult thing to concentrate the mind and attach it to one organ only. The mind is a slave. So the mind is a slave to the normally, in normal conditions, when we say a person is worldly, what we actually mean is that he has no control over his mind. It is the external objects which motivate him to perform actions. He gets the input just as an animal does. He gets the input, and the reaction to that input by the mind, which if the mind is not controlled, so this reaction determines the capacity of the person, the capacity of the person to be attached or detached uh, to the sensory inputs. So the sensory inputs are neutral. The man of realization or a man of self-control also sees the world as a worldly person sees. But the way he reacts, the attitude with which he interprets the data and reacts is the determining factor. The difference between spirituality and a worldly life is only this much. One can be in the world, as Thakur very nicely put it. The boat can be in water, but the water should not be in the boat. Water in the boat means you are not able to practice pratyahara. Pratyahara means ahara means food, the intake. Pratyahara means prati ahara. Prati means against that. So the mind says, let the input come, but I'll not register it. Or even if I register it, I'm not reacting to it. So that reaction is actually, when you do pratyahara, actually you are controlling the reaction because you have no control over the input. You can't say that I will be in the world and I'll not see the world at all. You may escape to a forest, but there also you're taking your mind there. So as long as the mind is not controlled, it's not enough if the sense organs are controlled. The sense organs just give you the input. It is the centers in the brain which interpret it, and it is the mind which either attaches or detaches. Swamiji says pratyahara means you don't attach yourself to these organs. Now, how to do it? That is the whole challenge in spirituality. Now, Swamiji says we tell many people, we tell the children, give them many moral values. We say that you should not tell lies, you should not do this, you should not steal. We give them so many yamas and niyamas, the moral virtues. But Swamiji says, if suppose for example, a child is very hungry and there are some sweets in front of him, you may tell him the sweets are bad, too many sweets are bad. But if he is hungry, he is going to eat those sweets. So how not to react and not to eat that sweet is done through pratyahara. Pratyahara enables you to tell the sense organs you give whatever input you want to give, but I will decide whether I should react or not. Unfortunately, this animals don't have. That's why we say that animals don't have the capacity of pratyahara or discrimination to the extent we have. We have that capacity and we can decide, we can use our willpower, we can use our knowledge, we can use our Jnana Shakti, Ichha Shakti and Kriya Shakti to decide under what circumstances, what are the inputs. Inputs will come, we can't stop it. As long as man lives in the world, the boat has to be in the water. The water will touch the boat, but it is touching from below, so it doesn't matter. It is like sense organs giving you input, but you don't react. You don't react in the way a worldly person would react. So that is what is known as pratyahara. You don't react, you decide how you should react to the sensory input. So prati ahara. Ahara means what you take inside. And your reaction to that ahara, your reaction to the sensory inputs through the eyes, through the ears, through the mouth, through the skin, and all the different sensory organs, they are constantly bombarding your mind with different inputs. And you say, you put a stop. He said, okay, the input is fine. But what is the nature of output? How do I decide what to do, whether I should eat or not eat? This discriminatory power, this control, not discriminatory power, this control of the sense organ, internal sense organs to react is what is known as pratyahara. Then Swamiji says, he says just telling a child what he should do or what he should not do is not going to help, because we do not, unless we teach the child pratyahara, some rudiments of pratyahara, where he is trained to react in a particular way, react in a most appropriate way, react with discrimination, react with viveka, or react or have practice self-control. So self-control is nothing but pratyahara. When you do pratyahara, we are actually it is not self-control, it is sense control. Self-control involves sense control and mind control also. Now here, dharana and dhyana, when you do, you reach the mental level. Now you are still at the sensory level. You are still gross. We just dealt with pranamaya kosha. We finished with Annamaya Kosha, we did asana, we did pranayama to control our pranas. After having controlled the prana, now yoga says in pratyahara, you control the sense organs. Since we cannot control the input, you control the output. That is the, in brief, what pratyahara is all about. So all actions, now this is what yoga says, internal or external. Now we have to remember there are internal actions. Like when we dream, the actions are internal. There are no external objects. The whole world is internal. So the whole dream life is internal. So he says whether it is internal or whether it is external, the actions when you react to that, the certain centers in the brain which are responsible for the reaction are known as sukshma indriya. Now you have the sthula indriya. Sthula means gross. Gross indriyas are very easy to understand. They are the eyes, ears, and 10 indriyas are there, karmendriya and gyanendriya. But sukshma indriyas are in the brain. They are very close to the mind, though they are not part of the mind. These indriyas, in some philosophies, they say these are mental activities because its brain is required. But it is actually the center in the brain. No doubt the mind is required. The mind should give it an instruction of whether to react or not. So when the mind joins itself to these subtle organs in the brain, then all our actions occur. We react. We react by applying the mind. If the mind says no, let the inputs come, you are not going to react. Let the 100 inputs come. Let so many tempting things be placed in front of you. You simply tell your karmendriya, that is the mouth, that you should not eat this. And it is the mind who decides. Mind tells the karmendriya of the mouth not to respond to the temptation of the sweets being kept in front of you. So you say, no, I'm not going to eat it. This is known as pratyahara. There, Swamiji says, the mind when it joins or mind when it reacts to this sense perception, we have what you call as pratyahara. So you have to remember this pratyahara is nothing but control of the sense organs, the subtle sense organs in the brain by the mind. Or in brief, control of the reactions to the sense inputs. Now these reactions are very, very important because if you don't react, it is like not allowing the water to come inside the boat. When Thakur gave this wonderful example, what is the difference between a worldly person and a spiritual person? In a worldly person, the water is inside the boat. That means he has no control either over the input or the external, the reaction of the mind and the sense organ, the reaction to the sense objects, that also is not under control. So that's why they say water is both inside and outside the boat. That's why the boat drowns. Whereas if the reaction, the 50% of the perception, the reaction to that perception, if is under your control, then you say whatever happens, whatever be the inputs, I am not going to react. So that is what is known as pratyahara, and that is also known as vairagya. Willingly or unwillingly, normally it is willingly, but sometimes unwillingly, like for example smoking a cigarette. We may not think, the mind may not tell you, now you go and smoke a cigarette. The moment the cigarette comes, you automatically, the mind unwillingly also picks up the cigarette and smokes, and then perhaps it thinks, oh, I should not have spoken. So that's why Swamiji says, willingly or unwillingly, the mind is drawn to join itself to the centers. And when the mind joins, then the danger comes. Then the pratyahara is not possible. Then there is reaction, and then reaction will follow. Karma will result, and then karma will give rise to samskara. Samskara will give rise to worldliness or rebirth and all those things. That is why people do foolish deeds and then feel miserable. But they can check when they can check when they are at the stage of pratyahara by telling the mind not to react, just to wait. So that's why in Japan they have a very good technique which is known as management by delay. Sometimes delay in reaction also helps you not to react. If you are always in a hurry to react, somebody says something and somebody tells you some bad words and you just react and get angry. But if you somehow develop that habit of delaying your reaction. If you can't stop it, pratyahara means to stop or direct it properly. But if you can't stop it, at least delay it. So the delay itself helps you or gives you time to decide wisely whether you should react or not. So management by delay, according to this Japanese management technique, is many problems can be solved just by wait and watch, using the policy of wait and watch. They say there is a problem. The people, employees come and tell the manager their problem. The manager says, okay, let us just wait. So they just, by delay, a little delay, sometimes of course decisions have to be taken immediately when there is an emergency. But if it is not so important, half of the problems or 90% of the problems get solved by themselves. You have to give them time. So pratyahara also, unwillingly or willingly, we have to decide that we shall not react. We shall think and then react. The input you have no control because it will come. If the eye is open, you will see things. If the ear is open, you will hear things. So you can't avoid. You can't, unless you go to the forest or shut all the organs, which are not possible. That is possible only during deep sleep. Even in dream, the organs, the subtle organs are active. You see dream objects, you see dream visions, you hear dream sounds. So you can't shut yourself out. So yoga says, don't worry, pratyahara just means that you don't react, but let the input come. The mind, if the Swamiji says, people do and feel miserable because their mind is not under their control. If the mind is not under their control, they can't control the sense organs. Then the sense organs react, and sense organ react. That gives rise to actions, and actions will give rise to further reactions, and the chain of karma will start. So, to pratyahara helps you to lessen the reaction time as well as the intensity, and gradually these thoughts, which the inputs which come, they come and vanish. Just as they came, they slowly vanish. If the mind were under control, they would not react. What would be the result of controlling the mind? Now this Swamiji is asking. Now suppose you control your mind through pratyahara and also through dharana. Dharana comes later. Dharana is concentration. It then would not join itself to the centers of perception, and naturally feeling and willing would be under control. Right now, our problems are that our feelings are not under our control. We think we are controlling our feelings. But some people, many of the people feel that they are angry in spite of themselves. They know anger is coming. But from where is it coming? It's coming due to a reaction. It's coming because there is no pratyahara. So pratyahara is an important step in controlling feeling and willing. Willing means willing is required. Knowing is something different. Knowing is perception. But feeling and willing is the reaction. Unless you feel, you don't react. If you just watch, like you are watching a movie, you know it is unreal. You are watching a movie, whatever be the scenes there, you don't react because they are not real. You know it's just a movie. As soon as the screen, the projection stops, you'll just see an empty screen and then you'll go back to your normal life. You don't get upset unless you get involved emotionally or willingly. So that's why feeling and willing has to be under control. That is what pratyahara helps you to attain. The mind, if it doesn't join the centers of perception, naturally feeling and willing would be under control. Is it possible? Now this is Swamiji's question. Now it's easy to say that this is the process and this is how it should be. But they say, is it possible? Is it perfectly possible? You see it in modern times. The faith healers teach people to deny misery. There are some faith healers, there are some hypnotists also. It's not just the faith healers. What they do is through auto-suggestion, they say, now think that you have no pain, think that you have no pain. And then they try to hypnotize you or make you convince you that there is no pain. So that what it actually is, what they actually do is they tell the mind that you don't think of the pain. The pain is giving you some input and you deny pain by refusing your mind to be attached to the sense organs. But Swamiji says their philosophy is rather roundabout. They have stumbled upon some kind of yoga, this pratyahara, by actually imposing the pratyahara of the hypnotist on the patient. Now, this is not advisable according to Swamiji. They are achieving the same purpose. They are using the pratyahara, but the pratyahara is of another person, an external person who controls your reaction and then tells you, no, you don't feel pain. What does a hypnotist do? He controls the weak mind of the person whom he is hypnotizing and tells you, see, you don't have this. And you see exactly as he tells you. So the reaction, even if you are seeing something, he'll say, no, you are not seeing that. And if a person's mind is weak, his sense organ, that pratyahara will be so powerful of the hypnotist that the person who is hypnotized will get a feeling that that object is really not there. But Swamiji says they succeed in making a person throw off suffering by denying it. They are using a part of pratyahara. As they make the mind of the person strong enough to ignore the senses, the hypnotist, in a similar manner, by their suggestion, excite in the patient a sort of morbid pratyahara. Now, Swamiji is asking us to make a difference between the pratyahara which we do it voluntarily. If a person does it himself, it is a better form of pratyahara. If somebody else does it for him, for example, the hypnotist does, the hypnotist's suggestion can only act upon a weak mind. So Swamiji says that will work if a strong-minded person, no matter how much the hypnotist tries or how much these faith healers try, they are not going to get cured. They are not going to get cured or they are not able to practice pratyahara. So hypnotic suggestions, hypnotism has been used for medicines, for many things, to solve psychological problems, to solve even physical pain and other problems. But that morbid pratyahara which is induced by the hypnotist is not a pratyahara. If you do yourself, if you deny pain yourself and strengthen your mind and tell the organs, no, don't react to this pain. You have no pain. You have no pain. So there are people who can do that. If you do it yourself, then it is of, then Swamiji says it is real pratyahara. But this morbid pratyahara is somebody else's pratyahara, and that works only if the patient is weak, has a weak mind. If he has a weak mind, then he will completely be under the subjugation of that hypnotist who uses his pratyahara to force the hypnotic suggestions. And until the operator, by means of fixed gaze or otherwise, has succeeded in putting the mind of the subject in sort of a passive morbid condition, his suggestions will never work. First of all, the hypnotism doesn't work if the person who is being hypnotized is restless. If his mind is strong, it will not work. If his mind is restless, then it will not work. He has to somehow, that's why hypnotists, they ask the patient to concentrate on certain black dots or something, or they say just look into my eyes. So they induce a sort of artificial pratyahara, as Swamiji says, a morbid pratyahara, and then they force their suggestions on them and tell them you don't have pain or you don't have this, you're all right, you're fine. So temporarily they even give some relief, they can even cure. But then that is not going to help, because every time you have a problem, you need a hypnotist. Now, it is not really controlling the brain centers by the power of one's own will, but by the power of somebody else's will. But it is, as it were, stunning the patient's mind for a time by sudden blows which another's will delivers to it. It is not checking by means of range and muscular strength the mad career of a fiery team of horses. Suppose you run your own carriage and the horses are running fast and you don't know how to control it. There are two ways to control it. Swamiji gives a beautiful example. The horses are running fast. Horses are your sense organs. They are running wild and you don't know how to. My mind is like the reins of the horses. The charioteer has to control the horses by the reins. If he is not strong enough, if his mind is not strong enough, the horses will run wild. Now, there are two ways to control the horses. One is you tell the mind, make the mind strong and control the horses. Or you do one thing, which the hypnotist does, you just give a nice blow on the head of the horses themselves. Then the horses will stop. So that is a dangerous way, because that you are killing the horses, you are destroying the sense organ. That's why hypnotism is not advisable. If somebody else forces pratyahara on you, pratyahara should be done by yourself. That is why they say the horses are stunned for some time into gentleness, and that is why they don't act. But the better way, or a more permanent way, is to control the reins and pull it, so that you can control the horses yourself. Then your journey of life becomes smooth. Now, till at last, the mind, instead of gaining the power of perfect control, becomes a shapeless, powerless mass. Every attempt at control which is not voluntary, not with the controller's own mind, is not only disastrous, but it defeats the end. That means when you meditate, no doubt we take external aid, but we should use our willpower, our Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and emotional power. That's why we are told to direct our emotions towards our Ishta, direct our will towards our Ishta, direct our knowledge, because he has the capacity to absorb the shocks. He has the capacity to guide us properly, because he is stronger, and since he is in your heart, he is the self of yourself. He is like the charioteer who controls your whole destiny. So you give the reins to him and ask him, see, I can't control my mind. My strength is not enough. My Ichha Shakti, Gyan Shakti, or Kriya Shakti is not strong enough to do this pratyahara. But since you are strong, you had self-control, because normally we meditate or visualize the Ishta who is stronger than ourselves. Definitely, he is one full of mental control, full of renunciation, full of so many things, so many good qualities which we have read about him, on which we have meditated. So these things are very important. You just don't meditate on your Ishta as Sachidananda. He is of course Sachidananda in one respect, but in from another point of view, he is also having these wonderful qualities which we don't have, or we have in a very small measure. If we don't have renunciation, we have somebody inside our heart who has infinite renunciation. We have somebody who has infinite self-control. So we pray to him, we hitch our wagon to his and ask him, you be our controller. That is why we say, when we say prayer, we say, Lord, you take control of our destiny, because you are having all the qualities which I need to practice, but since I don't have it, you do it. That's what Swamiji says. The goal of each soul is freedom. Freedom from the slavery of matter and thought, mastery of external and internal nature. Now the mind has to be brought under control, and this mastery can be achieved in a very easy way if we ask our Ishta, who is sitting deep within our heart, to take control of our destiny and do this pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, everything we ask him to do on our behalf. We focus on him, and all these things become very natural. Instead of leading towards that, every will current from another, in whatever form it comes, either as direct control of organs or forcing to control them when under a morbid condition, it creates more and more superstitions, and it creates a heavy bondage of past thoughts. So every time we believe that we were not able to control, no doubt many times we have failed. We have failed to control our minds. But the memory of that will not help. The more you think of that, we increase more and more bondages. Every time you think, oh no, it is not possible for me. There are two ways. If you are an Advaitin, you will say, no, myself is so powerful that I will do it myself. But the other way is, my Ishta is so powerful, I may be weak, but if I give up my ego, then my Ishta takes the seat of myself. He is the self of myself. And with the help of his willpower, his self-control, I can do pratyahara. So that is the idea. There are two ways. So to get rid of superstition, according to Swamiji, he says this pratyahara, before even we start the process of dharana, which is concentration of mind, and dhyana, meditation, to the extent we control our organs, 100% control will not be there. We cannot say, like Sri Ramakrishna used to say, whenever he told his mind, see, even when he was suffering from pain, terrible pain of the throat, he said many times, I feel the pain. But when he tells his mind not to feel the pain, because he had perfected the art of pratyahara, he said there will be no reaction, because he used to keep his mind on the infinite joy within, infinite joy of the Divine Mother who was within him. He was always conscious of that, and that enabled him to handle all the problems, all the physical problems, the pain which he had due to cancer, and so many things. So, no extraneous will can work upon you unless you are a deceased person. Deceased in the sense not only physically but mentally. So, Sri Krishna, though he was externally, maybe he was a deceased person. So, he had this so much faith in mother that she would, that's why he many times, when some people used to come and tell him, they would not believe that Sri Krishna had so much control that he would not touch money. Even Naren did not believe. So he thought, how is it possible that the moment you touch the coin, the reaction is so intense that the hand just starts stinging in pain? Not only the mind rejects it, but the sense organs, the whole personality of Thakur rejected something which he said has to be avoided. The pratyahara was so strong, it was not just we have pratyahara, we tell the mind that, okay, don't touch this or don't take this. This is, if we take something which does not belong to us, or maybe without taking the permission, it is like robbery. So, but Thakur could not. Thakur even could not take a lemon. One day, somebody brought lemon without asking the owner of that estate. But Thakur's sensitivity was so much, he said, something is wrong, I can't take this lemon juice. Then he said, then that person asked and inquired. He said, no, I bring the lemon from that same farm. But that day, the farm had changed ownership. So you see Thakur's cosmic mind, how he was attuned to the cosmic mind. The cosmic mind knew that the previous owner who had given permission to the sevak to bring lemons from his farm, from his tree, had sold that land, and from that day onwards, the property belonged to somebody else. Now this was not known to the sevak. He just plucked those lemons and brought it. Thakur said, I can't take this lemon juice, you just throw it away. So something was telling him, though he did not know of the background, but you see, the pratyahara was so strong that the cosmic mind could give him a hint, and that reacted, and that caused a reaction, forcing him not to drink that lemon. He says, you just check, there is something wrong. This lemon you have not brought from the right place. I am not able to take this. So the sevak goes and asks the owner. He says, oh, I forgot to tell you, I have sold that farm. So that means whatever lemons he took were not taken with the permission of the new owner. So it's like stealing. So consciously or unconsciously, Swamiji is saying, we can at least try consciously not to do these things, but Thakur could not even unconsciously had unconscious control over his sense organs. Like, for example, Naren also tested him when he heard that he cannot touch a coin, because he had told that money and Kamini and Kanchan, lust and gold, are to be avoided. So the moment gold or some coin came, his hand shrunk. He could not touch it. So Naren did not believe, being a science student who has studied science, how is it possible for somebody to react? How can the body react? The mind can, of course, avoid touching the coin, but even the body unconsciously hid a coin under the mattress. And Thakur just went and sat on it and suddenly started jumping, saying that there is some money somewhere. So he could not even bear the touch. Then Naren felt ashamed that he was testing his own guru. But the idea is that the Swami Shardanandji says this idea of pratyahara had become a nervous association with Sri Ramakrishna, with his body. The nerves were not only the mind, but the entire Annamaya Kosha and Pranamaya Kosha were associated with that thought of not touching the coin. See, in our case, what happens? We just tell our mind there are certain things which we should not do, there are certain things which we are allowed to do, and then we discriminate and don't do it using our willpower. But we cannot have that kind of discrimination or renunciation which is unconscious, which happens habitually without even using our willpower. That happened in the case of Sri Ramakrishna. His nervous association of ideas means the idea of not touching a coin was so deep that it percolated the mind, it percolated the sense organs, it percolated even the Annamaya Kosha. His renunciation was even gross. So the mere touch of the coin, his nervous system reacted and he felt as if he should not touch it. That was the state of mind he had. But we can't do that. At least it may be desirable for a yogi. But there are, as you advance in spiritual life, somehow some kind of intuition you start developing. You certain foods don't, if touched by some people who have some desires or something, you just don't feel like eating them. It's not explainable. Like Thakur's case, he could not touch. He could not even touch that or drink water, even if it is brought by a person who was impure. Thakur was so sensitive. Perhaps we are not so sensitive, but at least as we advance, the more the idea of pratyahara becomes deeper and deeper. It sinks down into our consciousness. It first sinks down into our mind, the conscious mind. Then it sinks down into our unconscious mind, the sympathetic nervous system, and the autonomous nervous system. And when it enters the autonomous nervous system, then even if you want to, you will not do a wrong. So Sri Ramakrishna was saying that a stage will come for a perfect yogi who will not commit a mistake. He doesn't have to use a willpower not to commit mistakes. His autonomous nervous system itself will react, will tell him, don't do this. He simply cannot do it. He cannot do things which will drag him to the world. So Swamiji says, how hard it is to control the mind. He gives another beautiful example. Now he says, only when we do this, when we develop this pratyahara, Swamiji says, he who has succeeded in attaching or detaching his mind to or from the centers at his will has succeeded in pratyahara. Now you have to remember this, we have to understand this sentence very carefully. He who has succeeded in attaching or detaching his mind to or from the centers at will has succeeded in pratyahara. So it is not contact with the world which is harmful. Here Swamiji is very clearly telling you that the question of the challenge when you are practicing pratyahara is not allowing the mind and the organs to develop a connection. That is when the harm takes place. That is when you become gross. You may be in the gross, you may be surrounded by the gross, but if the mind is not connected to the organs, then you are safe. That is why there is a beautiful verse in the Gita, Matra Sparshas tu Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada. Matra Sparsha. Matra means for a normal human being, contact with the external objects. Matra means external objects. Sparsha means touch. So contact with the external objects and cold, hot, heat, and all those different things. Shitoshna Sukha Dukkada, happiness, misery. So he's giving the pair of opposites. Sometimes we like hot, sometimes we like cold. So all these pair of opposites, they are felt only when you come in touch with the cold objects or the hot objects. So not allowing them to influence your mind is what is pratyahara, gathering towards, which means gathering towards, pratyahara, checking the outgoing powers of the mind, freeing it from the bondage to the senses. Right now, uh, pratyahara means gathering towards, not allowing the mind to go out. Because if there is a reaction, the mind will go out, the organs will go out, and you will react. You will do the actions which are prohibited, which you ought not to do. So, one who gathers his mind inside, checking the outgoing powers of the mind and freeing it from the bondage of the senses. You just don't do as the senses dictate you. The senses will definitely dictate you that this is a nice thing, you just take it. This is a nice thing, you eat it. So, all these things require the help of the mind to prevent that reaction. When we can do this, we shall really possess character. Then alone we shall have taken a long step towards freedom. Before that, we are mere machines. So what does a machine do? The machine is just taught, or a robot, it is just taught, it gets some sensory input, it just reacts. Like animals, most of the animals. Even animals have sometimes discrimination. They don't react always. They decide whether it is harmful or not harmful, and then they decide. So Swamiji is saying, before that we are mere machines. Only when we control the mind, only when we practice pratyahara, we can go further in spiritual life towards dharana, concentration, and meditation. Now Swamiji gives a wonderful example. What is this? Why is it so hard to control the mind? He says it is like a monkey. There was a monkey who was restless by his own nature, as all monkeys are. Now, he is comparing the mind, is giving a wonderful example, saying that mind is like a monkey. So like all monkeys, the mind is definitely restless. By its very nature, it is restless. Now, if that were not enough, someone made him drink freely of wine, so that he became still more restless. Now, the ordinary mind itself is restless. So when you feed that monkey with the wine of desire, like the different desires which come to our mind, if we just give free play to those desires, then it is like drinking wine. So the restless monkey becomes all the more restless. Then he says a scorpion stung him. So monkey was restless, it drank some wine, it became more restless, and then to add to it a scorpion. So whenever a scorpion stings even a normal person, he starts jumping. So when a man is stung by a scorpion, he jumps about for a whole day. So the poor monkey found his condition worse than ever. To complete his misery, a demon entered into him. That's what they say. Booth enters a person, then he starts behaving in weird ways. What language can describe the uncontrollable restlessness of the monkey? The human mind is like that monkey, incessantly active by its own nature. So restlessness is the very nature. As Arjuna asked Sri Krishna, the mind is restless. What can I do? You are asking me to control the mind. Leave alone pratyahara. I was not even able to control the thought waves. So without pratyahara, without dharana, without dhyana, these things are not possible. But what is the reason? Why does the monkey become more restless? By drinking wine, by getting stung with a scorpion, and finally demon enters the mind of the monkey. So you can imagine three destabilizing or three factors which make the monkey more restless. Our mind is just like that. First of all, it is restless like a monkey, and we drink the wine. We drink the wine of desire, and that increases the turbulence of the mind. Then after desire comes the scorpion of jealousy. So jealousy, envy, trying to compare ourselves with others and feeling, oh, he has that, I don't have this. So comparison or jealousy, which results from comparison. When we have jealousy, when we have envy towards other things, other people, other objects, then it is compared to the scorpion, and then the mind becomes more restless. First of all, it is restless, then the desires make it, but Good desires are okay. I mean, it makes the mind turbulent, but one or two desires won't make the mind so turbulent as jealousy, because jealousy multiplies these desires, creates an envy. Once the envy comes or jealousy comes, then you start planning, how can I also get this? How can I also possess this? Not because I want it, just because somebody else has it. So jealousy and envy comes because of that. So he says the monkey gets stung by the scorpion of jealousy, and last of all, the demon of pride. Now, the demon here is compared to the pride. So, restlessness of the monkey is first due to desire, more restless because of the scorpion of jealousy at the success of others, and last of all, the demon of pride. Pride is something which makes you all important, which gives so much of self importance that we lose our humility. Every time we are seeking importance, the moment somebody doesn't give you importance, we feel restless. We want recognition. We want people to recognize us. Even if we are genuinely, we deserve recognition, still that pride should not be there, because if people for some reason do not recognize, why should the ego be hurt? The ego is nothing but this ego is responsible for the pride. The more the ego, the more we pamper it, the more we think that we are not getting importance that was due to us, whether it is due or not due. Ego has a nature, the pride has a nature, making it think itself of all importance. Swamiji says, how hard to control such a mind? So how do you control such a mind? The first lesson, Swamiji, there are 5 minutes, so I'll just read this, and then we'll discuss it in the next class. The first lesson then is to sit for some time. So this is very important. Now, many of the children, in schools, when I was in India, they used to ask, but the first step Swamiji gives is so important. He says, just sit for some time and let the mind run on. Now, this nobody tells us. We think we have to just sit down and immediately control the mind. That's not going to happen. So Swamiji says, let the mind run. Just sit for some time. First of all, the body has to be made a bit, body has to rest, body has to sit down so that it does not add to the restlessness of the mind, and let the mind run on. The mind is bubbling up all the time. It is like that monkey jumping about. But he says, doesn't matter. Let the monkey jump as much as he can. You simply wait and watch. Now, here we come again to patience and other virtues, which are patience, contentment, and all. So, desires may come, restlessness due to desires, due to jealousy, due to envy, and all those things. The monkey is jumping about. So, you just watch, wait and watch, and the monkey will get tired. Knowledge is power, says the proverb. Until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. So you have to know how the mind is reacting. What are the things which are making you jealous? What are the things which are making you compare yourself with others? What are the things which exposed to which you get desires now and then? So there are many things which you can do to avoid the desires, to avoid jealousy. So Swamiji says, until you wait and watch how the mind is behaving, how can you control it? We tell the children, control your mind, do meditation, control your mind. How can he control unless he knows what are the various forces that are making the mind jump? So until you know what the mind is doing, you cannot control it. Give it the rein, many hideous thoughts may come into it. You will be astonished, Swamiji says, that it was possible for you to think such hideous and stupid thoughts. We think that we were nice people. Why do these stupid thoughts come? From where do they come? But you will find that each day the mind's vagaries are becoming less and less violent. So in the beginning, the violence is more. All you have to do is just watch, allow it, like you allow the monkey. The monkey will one day become tired unless you fuel it with more wine. and fuel it with unless a scorpion bites it. If you avoid those things, then the restlessness of the monkey is very easy to handle. So he says each day that you will find the mind becomes calmer. In the first few months, you will find that the mind will have great many thoughts. Later, you will find that they have somewhat decreased. And in a few more months, they will be fewer and fewer until at last the mind will be under perfect control. So these are the various steps. We'll discuss about it. But Swamiji says we must patiently watch the mind every day for some time. We get a lot of opportunities to watch the mind. When we are doing nothing, instead of trying to add our activities, why can't we just watch what our mind does? Holy Mother used to say, though she said you have to do japa and all those things, he says at least 10 minutes before you retire, before you go to sleep, just watch how you have progressed. Last 4 months, 3 months, 2 months, you have been doing japa. Has the mind become better? There may be some periods sometimes when the mind is unusually restless because of some particular incident, not because of that. In normal day, when everything is normal, we have to observe our mind and find out how how the mind is behaving when we are just watching it. So watching the mind was a very important sadhana apart from japa and meditation, which Holy Mother also uh, encouraged the disciples to do. He said it's not enough because unless you know what the japa does to you, how it reacts, are you progressing? So many things you can observe when you allow the mind when you patiently watch the mind. You can't observe if you are running all the time. Even if need be, you have to stop the japa. Because when you do japa, the thoughts already such good thoughts or bad thoughts might come. But normally when you do japa, you think on the Ishta. If you are focusing, then you normally don't get bad thoughts. But there is a chance that you may just slip away from the memory of the japa. You may think you are doing mechanically, you might be doing japa, but then from other part of the brain, the mind is bubbling, some thoughts are bubbling. So now and then it would be nice to watch your mind. That's what Swamiji is saying. You have to patiently practice this watching of the mind. The next we'll come to, in the next class, we'll come to the uh, other aspects of Pratyahara. Pratyahara is not over. This whole chapter is on Pratyahara. Dharana and Dhyana will be in the next chapter. So I'll stop now, and if there are some questions, you can ask. Yes. Yes. Yeah, you can just raise your hand if you're not able to unmute. If you're not able to unmute, you please raise your hand so that I can, or you can unmute and ask.
Maharaj, this is Sudeep from San Francisco.
Yes.
Pranam Maharaj.
Okay.
I have one question. In this current situation of economic turmoil, where at least in Bay Area, 1 in 4 people do not have jobs.
1 in?
1 in 4 people do not have jobs.
My God, 25% have lost jobs or they never have?
Yes, and it's all high-tech areas.
Okay.
People with upper middle class, that economic sense background,
Okay.
suddenly find nowhere to go.
Uh-huh.
So in this situation, how do you, because you talked about
Is it a
jealousy,
permanent thing or it will come back to normal? Because the government is giving them some support, isn't it?
no, Maharaj, in that way you get some support from maybe the government in some fashion, unemployment allowance, those kind of things. But as you know, the day-to-day expenses in San Francisco Bay Area is very expensive.
Yes.
So survival is the key. Now, my question to you, Maharaj, like you talked about jealousy, talked about other things, the mind get distorted
Yes.
continuously, just like a wine.
Yes.
This ori is about basic existence. Uh, maybe it's a part of jealousy as well.
Oh, no,
Existence.
no, no.
Ori
That
is about
cannot be called as jealousy.
uh,
When you are really suffering, how can
yeah,
you call it jealousy?
right.
Of
So
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's always difficult to calm down, right? So how people need to cope up with the coming down in their lifestyle, day-to-day existence without worrying about it. And his worrying is definitely a mind thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Worries will give rise to desire. I mean, worries, of course, now the worry is not having more things, but having the least minimum of things to survive, isn't it? So
Yes.
one way is definitely, I don't know, it may not be practical for everybody, but to cut down the needs.
Yes.
You have to
Yes.
not compare ourselves. There may be some people who have not lost the jobs, and
Mm-hmm.
keep up our prestige or so called sense of pride, that no, I'm also, I
Mm-hmm.
don't mind even borrowing, but I'll not show that I need money or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Mm-hmm.
you really are in a position where you need to cut down on your expenses and
Mm-hmm.
make life a bit simple, then one should be humble enough to do it. That is how your worries will be less. Because really speaking, there are people living on $1 per day in India, countries like India. I'm not saying we have to live on that, but there are
Absolutely.
people in Bangladesh, for example, they say
Mm-hmm.
the happiness index is the highest. Don't you think they don't worry because they also lost jobs? But somehow they have learned to live with the minimum things. Our needs we have multiplied,
Yes.
and we have created some complications. So I think this is a time, this is of course going to be temporary. You can't expect this situation to go
Mm-hmm.
eternally. Someday or the other, normalcy will return. Now government, everybody is worried, not just San Francisco area, even England, big countries, rich countries are also worried, because
Yes,
how
Maharaj.
long the government can support. But the thing is, now maybe the time has come when we can see how much less we can live with. I mean,
Yes.
suppose I live with, I need $50 per day, I can easily spend. I can ask myself, can I not spend just 25 and just still be happy? Let us make things a bit simple, simple living. If we practice, it's not going to harm, because you see, those who have been living simple lives, perhaps they have more savings to back upon. But those
Sure.
who are extravagant and who had this kind of pride or maybe
Mm-hmm.
jealous, try to match their neighbors or their friends and trying to buy, I mean, things which they really don't need. Now, only such people will worry. Otherwise, you see, some people who
True.
have been very wise, they said, just because I have money, should I spend? Let me not do it. Let me save
Mm-hmm.
it for a rainy day. So,
You
so that we have to be a bit prudent.
prudent. And it's
Uh,
also time to look inwards, right?
Inwards, definitely. Inwards is, that is the greatest lesson take away from this COVID.
Yes. Yes,
You
exactly,
have to
Maharaj.
definitely, even a normal situation, you have to look inward. The
Mm-hmm.
situation
Sure.
came, the situation, the worry, the panic, and all these things have come because we never looked inward. We were so busy with outward development, and we thought,
Mm-hmm.
we did not even mind uh, spending a lot of money, being a bit careless, and all those things. So now I think people will start, because this is not an impossible. These things have happened in the past. Economic downturn has happened,
Mm-hmm.
wars have happened, but this is of course a very unusual type of which is affecting everybody, not just one country. That is the
Mm-hmm.
problem. So you can't even think of going back to India. If you go to India, what will you do? And if people have lost their jobs, they have to do something, go somewhere. So holding on to the jobs, those who have jobs, they should consider themselves lucky that at least they
Mm-hmm.
have a fixed job. So,
Exactly.
and try to, even though they have not lost their jobs like other colleagues,
Still, yes,
yeah, they can practice some kind of restraint, spend less,
yes, yes.
be safe, so that situation, if it comes, one has to be
They can
uh,
manage,
managed.
cope up.
So worry comes only if our needs are more. If our greed is more, needs normally God has provided us enough to just meet our needs. But if we are having more desires, and the more desires we have, the more worries will be there, more restlessness will be there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am. Thank you, Maharaj.
But of course, the solution is, I mean, your question is genuine, because people were never expecting this. Yes.
Yes, Maharaj.
Yeah. Any more
Pranam.
questions? Namaste.
Maharaj, I have a question.
Yes.
Does willpower plays in achieving pratyahara?
Yeah. Will and Swamiji said, na, will and emotions.
All right.
See, knowledge, it definitely gives you guidelines. Knowledge tells you you should do this and do that. But we people have knowledge. Everybody has knowledge. They know what is to be controlled, what is not to be controlled. So Swamiji says knowledge is not enough. It is emotion. Emotion means feeling. Feeling and willing, willpower. These two are the main things for pratyahara, actually. Not just willing, feeling also. If you don't have feeling, or if you don't control your feeling, then it will lead to jealousy, then it will lead to some kind of, you get upset when somebody tells you something, when somebody possesses more, you get angry and you want to, you desire. So emotions also, it's not just willpower, but emotions. Willpower is definitely very important, because without willpower, how can you control the outward flow of the senses, the reaction?
Right. Okay, thank you.
It's Sharon. Yeah.
Swamiji,
Yes.
I have a humble question,
Yes.
Maharaj.
Yes.
When we're in the sleep state, i.e. when we're sleeping, is that also a form of pratyahara? Because if our senses are closed off,
In sleep, you can't practice. In dream also, you can't practice, because in dream, your willpower, you are surrendering your willpower. Na? You are just allowing fantasy to. Emotions are active, and they say in dreams, your emotions are highly active. Otherwise, you will not dream. You cry, you do many things. But your willpower is very weak in the dream. That's why you get dreams. If your will was there, you would not have thought about those things. Suppose you get a nightmare, and you somehow want that you should not be, some tiger is running after you. But you take it as real, there are emotions, but there is no will. So in dream and other things, in dream state, pratyahara cannot be practiced, only in the waking state. That's why we have to make the most of our waking state. You can't do much in dream. You can't do much in sleep also, because sleep is necessary only for survival. So the minimum 3 hours, 4 hours is more than enough if you get good sleep. If you get very good sleep, we do want more sleep because we have more dreams than sleep. So dreams are not very desirable, because it is like waking state. It makes a man tired. So sleep is required, but in sleep pratyahara cannot be practiced. It has to be practiced in the waking state. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, in Jagrat state. Thank you.
Okay. Namaste. So shall I take your leave?
Maharaj, I had one question, please.
Yes, please.
I wrote it out, so you should have got it. I don't know, last time.
You can ask. Please. If I open the chat, yeah. Please tell me.
Okay.
The question.
So fine. I think with the pratyahara, when the mind gets calm, even momentarily, is there a problem where the mind can fall into the pitfall of complacency or laziness or tamas?
Yes.
And if so, how do we prevent that? I mean, I know the mind should be discriminating between calm and know the difference between complacency. But
So
in
that's
case
why
that falls,
complacency comes when you are tamasic. Tamas and sattva look very, very similar. You know, sometimes you see people, their mind is not restless because they have no capacity, they have no rajas at all. They can't think and they are dull minded. So you think, oh, he's a calm person, but you should not mistake that complacency for control, pratyahara. He is not even started pranayama and asana. He has not even done the first 4 stages, leave alone pratyahara. Because he is so dull that he has no control over even his prana, what to speak of mind. So that pratyahara is not pratyahara. Means if a person is complacent and it's like an ostrich, you know, Swamiji used to give that example. The ostrich, when it is chased by some animal and tries to kill, the ostrich runs very fast in the desert. And now and then it will get a big hollow somewhere and it will put its head inside the sand. And it doesn't know that even if it hides the head, the back portion of the ostrich is exposed. So the animal will come and kill it. So it says, I don't see the world, I don't see the problem, so I don't bother. So that is what tamasic people do. Tamasic people think that I don't have problem, no problems will come. Their mind is very cool because they don't anticipate any problem. They have not worked hard. You know, they're lazy. Maybe they're born in a very rich family. They know my parents are going to look after me, so I don't have to earn. So that is tamas. That is complacency. That complacency is not, it is better to have a restless mind than become tamasic. Swamiji warned, you know, he was telling somebody, one of, Turyananji was there, Turyananji. He had a brahmachari who said, I am not doing any work because it increases my thoughts and it makes the mind restless. So I'll just sit and meditate. And he was sleeping. He was actually sitting and dozing off. And naturally, if you doze off, you don't have thoughts and you feel relaxed. So Turyananji said, I'll nicely whip you. I'll make you dig the garden. You go and dig the garden outside. Work has made you very lazy and complacent. So is not how you can control your mind. First, you have to be active. Then you have to control the activity. So similar to tamas, but it is totally different. It's a higher state.
and thank you, Maharaj. So basically, also when we are practicing this, the inner controller will also guide us as to, what is the where
Inner controller will guide us if we give the charge to him. He will control only if you allow him to control. If we, out of pride, if we say, no, I can manage on my own, then why will Thakur come? If we allow him to control you, then you have to depend on him and pray to him and then say, see, I don't know what to do in this state. So he will slowly will take control. It's not that he will take control overnight. But once he takes control, then you will feel it. Then you will be actually seeing the restlessness go slowly and getting more and more control of your own mind.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, Namaste. So shall I take your leave now?
I think somebody else wanted to ask a question.
Oh, Charu, you want?
Somebody called Aruna wanted to ask you a question. She sent a question.
What is that?
How to get rid of jealousy at its root?
You ask the question? Okay.
She sent it in chat.
Chat, okay. Oh, you can see the chat or what? Yeah. Okay. So that is Aruna's question. Aruna, are you there? Are you still there? Okay, you're not able to unmute yourself, I think. Anyway, so how to get rid of jealousy? That is the only one line question. the best way to get rid of jealousy is to stop comparing with others. You see, jealousy comes only when you consider yourself inferior or superior to somebody. Of course, you won't feel jealous of somebody if you are superior. So, some people used to say that Swami Vivekananda was so great that he never felt any inferiority. So, he could not be jealous of anybody. So once somebody said, Swamiji, you are jealous. Then he says, I may be born with many defects, but one defect I don't have, and that is jealousy. Then somebody interprets it and says that a person who is so confident about himself, why should he be jealous? Because he thinks he doesn't need any he doesn't need anybody to compare himself with to be satisfied. He doesn't compare with kings. He doesn't compare. He's happy with his own self. Happy in his own self. So a person who is self-sufficient, or you can say a person who feels that he doesn't need anything external to make him happy. He's Atma Rama. Atma Rama is a beautiful word. They used to call the direct disciples of Thakur, Sri Ramakrishna used to call his relics, Atma Ramer Kota. Atma Ram means one who is happy within himself. He doesn't need external objects, external people, other people, the world to make him happy. He's happy, is content, self-content, self-satisfied. So self-satisfaction, contentment will give rise to, that's the only way to cultivate. If you cultivate these two things, self-satisfaction or contentment, then there is no comparison, and then there is no jealousy. You become jealous only if you compare yourselves and you think you are inferior to some people, you have less things than other people, then only the jealousy comes. So I think that is a practical way how to handle our jealousy. Okay? So shall I stop?
Ram Swamiji, can I ask a question?
Okay, who is that? Niti?
Yes, Swamiji.
Oh yes, please.
Swamiji, this is based on the previous questions, a similar thought process. So, for example, you said the difference between the sattvic and the tamasic, or when people are, for example, losing jobs, and they're also, and you had mentioned once that a depressed person also doesn't have any desire, like he also loses the desire in many material objects.
Yes,
So,
yes.
If I have to say pictorially, like in a snapshot, the sunset and sunrise look alike. Similarly, like from the just the qualities or observable qualities, the two states can look alike, but there is a great difference, as you
Yes.
mentioned.
Yes. Sunrise gives you pessimism or optimism. Sunrise, because the sun is going to rise. It is dark. Even sunset is dark, but the sunset gives a little bit of pessimism for a worldly person. I mean, for a spiritual person, there is no difference between sunrise and sunset, because in fact, some people like sunset because they can meditate. The whole world goes to sleep. Ya Nisha Sarva Bhutanam, in Gita it is there. What is day to the worldly person is night to the yogi. And what is night to the worldly person is a day to the yogi. So that means this example which you gave is a correct example, in the sense, from the worldly perspective, sunrise is always a optimistic event in one's life. That's why you say the life here sunrise, and sunset means, oh, he's depressed and he's going into greater and greater darkness. So that way it is correct. I mean, but so the difference is both are restless. Your question is, I think, if I have understood you correctly, you are asking what is the difference between the two, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, from just the observable qualities, they too look similar. However, personally, what I felt was a person who will be sattvic and free of desires will still have a higher goal to pursue, whereas a depressed person who
Yes,
is
go
free from
beyond
desires
Yes,
will
yes,
have a void and no goal to pursue at all.
yes. He's going
Something.
down. Yeah, yeah. That interpretation is okay, because if he is sunrise, a sattvic person cannot stop. Swamiji said, Thakur used to tell that parable. The tamasic robber, the rajasic robber, and the sattvic robber. But still, the sattvic person also has to give up robbery. I mean, he has to give up. He has to go higher. If sattva is a state, it's like better than rajas, better than tamas. Tamas you graduate to rajas. Rajas you graduate to sattvic. When you are fully sattvic, then you jump and go beyond the three gunas. That for that you require the help of Mahamaya. So that's why Gunamayi, we say Holy Mothers, she's beyond the three gunas, and she will help you to first go from tamas to rajas, rajas to sattva, and finally transcend sattva so that you can become one with Brahman. Okay?
Okay. So from tamas, it is necessary to go to rajas before going to sattva, is it?
Not necessary. Some people can directly skip and jump, but it is very rare. Normally, Swami Vivekananda also believed that one has to go gradually. That's why he wanted Indian youth to do hard work, help people, just to become Rajasic. He thought Indian people are very tamasic. So he said, first earn money, enjoy life if necessary, because then at least you will be Rajasic, and then you will be tired of enjoyment, and then finally you will you will go to sattva. So sattva doesn't come directly. Normally the steps are first tamasic, and see, you can't get rid of tamas altogether. We have a combination of all three. Even in the same day, morning perhaps we feel tamasic, but as soon as we get up, take a warm shower or something, we feel rajasic, we feel like running. And after a day tired, when we are tired, or maybe if we are not tired and if we have done our work efficiently, you feel like sitting down and meditating. That is sattvic. So these stages are not watertight compartments. You are partially sattvic, partially rajasic. The proportion changes depending on what you eat, and depending on how much pratyahara do. Ahara means not just food. The inputs you give, the output or the activity you do, everything decides your content of sattvic. If you meet sattvic people, if you meet people like Thakur, if you do satsanga, then sattva will rise. So the very idea of satsanga is to convert our rajas and tamas. Even a depressed person, you can feel as soon as you go to a very sattvic person, all your depression, without even asking him a question, you find you get a high, you feel very happy, you feel joyful, temporarily at least, as long as you are in that company. That is, the sattva of the other person can be contagious. So in the world also it is like that. Sometimes the food also determines. If you take sour food, stale food, there is a list of foods in the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, there are a list of foods which you should avoid. Rajasic, if you eat meat and all the Rajasic food, you feel like you become hyperactive. Now you have to decide which food suits you and at what stage you are, how much of sattva you need to keep your mind quiet. So there are many factors. Okay. So shall I take your leave now?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Pranam Maharaj, thank you.
Namaste. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti Shanti.
Shanti. Hari Om.
Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha Hari Om.
Thank you, Pranam Maharaj.
Pranam Swami Sarvastananda.
Namaste.